mean, it's like, it's a couple years old. It's still up, and of you in the hospital, and then him in the NICU. And then that first picture where you can really see his eyes. I was like, ooh, I don't know if you believe in reincarnation, but that boy is an old soul.
Oh no, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Oh,
He is.
like
He is.
that.
He has.
Those.
If I've never met anyone who's been here before, it has been him. And I saw it from the moment we like connected. I was like, cool. I used to think he was my great grandmother, but now I think that he is. Because he doesn't. When we talk about my great grandmother, he doesn't respond. So I was like, okay, maybe it's not her, but it could be someone maybe a generation before her. But I'm like, he is because he reminds me of my great grandmother so much, and I didn't know her that much. I knew her, but I knew her after she was already had a stroke and she was ill. But his spirit just reminds me so much of hers, and like even like the way he looks, and I'm like, So I say that all the time. I tell everybody in my family says that he is a very old soul.
I mean, I don't know.
Call him dapper. He's so dapper.
He is. He's beautiful. It's like.
I definitely noticed that when I do lives, it's lots of like after each one, I always feel like there's some type of healing, something happens, and I'm like, I just probably need to do more of them.
That's awesome.
I will also try not to cry.
Oh, what? Oh, wait, that reminds me. I need my tissues. Hold on.
She's so funny.
I was like, I knew I forgot something. I knew I forgot something. Okay. Because I have my on Sophia's toddler or high chair. I have my water and now my tissue box. Okay. Adrianna, it's okay. No, but teary eye, yes. We've definitely had that already on another podcast.
Oh, yeah.
How could you not?
Oh, my gosh.
So we're talking about babies and life and love and mommies
family
and family. Yes, a journey.
So I sort of want to hear because, okay, so I read a little bit about like when you found out that you had the kidney disease. And then, so you knew the day you were pregnant that this was going to be tough, right? And so I sort of wanted to, if you could like, if you're okay with talking about like the moment you found out you were pregnant, like what was that like for you? And sort of.
So the moment I found out I was pregnant, I had an inkling all week. I had an inkling from like it was like the first week of February, second week of February, going into Valentine's Day. And my breasts were like so painful. And I was like, I've never had this kind of pain during my cycle before. Like, what is this? And then I was nauseous. And I was a teacher. So I'm walking around like feeling like I am going to just throw up on everybody.
Wow.
My boobs hurting was the worst.
Your boobs are ready? I never, wow.
It was like, it was so bad. I felt like somebody was like literally just like sitting on them. It was so bad. And I was in a previous marriage. I was married for almost 5 years. And we had tried to get pregnant and we didn't. I was told I couldn't get pregnant. I was told if I did get pregnant that it wouldn't, like the baby wouldn't survive and I possibly wouldn't survive. And so and I was told like, you won't make it past like 8 weeks. Even if you ever get pregnant, you won't make it past 8 weeks because of your kidney failure. So in my mind, I couldn't have been pregnant, but I was like, am I pregnant? Like, what is going on? Like, So I go to Target that Saturday. I'll never forget it. I go to Target and I go get a test. I'm like, I'll get a test, whatever. I'm not gonna be pregnant, so it's fine. And it said positive, and I was like, what? And I was just like, I had like bubbles in my stomach, excitement, and then like just like fear, of course. And so I said a prayer that night. That if God let me keep the baby, that I would do everything in my power to protect it and make and take care of it. And so that was pretty much how it happened that night. I told a friend, I told my mom and my sister, and no one was really excited because of.
Oh, a call coming in.
Oops.
We got to think of that too, Flo. We got to think of everything that we can think of will happen.
Yeah.
Like, call comes in.
Well,
So everybody was like super. So let me see if I can get back.
Your family was kind of
my family
cautious
was super
or
cautious
scared?
and scared, and just was like, "Oh no, we don't believe you. Like it's probably a false positive. I'm sure your period will come." And then the person I was intimate with, I guess is the word, was like, "I'm pretty sure you should take that test in the morning." And in my mind, I'm like, "If you got a negative, you should take it in the morning. If you get a positive, a positive is a positive is a positive."
Right.
Especially how nauseous I was. And so that was my first reaction.
So we get it. We get it.
Yeah. So you made your promise to God that if the pregnancy was going to go, you were going with it. And I love that.
Yes.
That's amazing. And so you were like, you decided in that moment, I'm creating a family here. And that's amazing. So, that was just, I mean, for me, the most, were your at any point during your prenatal in that early stage, did any of your like medical people or family like try to push you to like be like, don't have the baby because you're going to die kind of deal? Like,
so,
well, can you go into like actually what you have? Had.
Oh, yes. So I was in 2009, I was diagnosed with kidney failure, kidney disease, which is called FSGS, which basically FSGS stands for focal segmental glomerulosis. And I have scarred tissue in my glomerular tubes. And then so your glomerular tubes are like what cleans your kidney out, like what makes your kidneys go. And like a water filter. And so mine are broken. And so since 2009, I've been like going up against this current. My body has gone against this current and with different medications and everything else. And so, funny enough, the week I found out I was pregnant, I was already going home for a doctor's appointment to get on dialysis. So I had an appointment to talk to my doctor about what my options were for dialysis, and that was the day I was setting up surgery to get a device in so I can start dialysis in a couple of weeks. Well, like a couple of months, because you have to wait for the device to mature first. So I get to the office and I look at him. We have a really good relationship, and I say, so I let him tell me everything, and then I say, well, I got to tell you something. I don't think you're gonna be happy about it. And he's like, oh, what? What is it? And I was like, I'm pregnant. And he's like, are you sure?
Way back.
Because with this kind of kidney failure, when you have this type of kidney failure, sometimes you don't even get your period. So to be pregnant is unheard of. It's like a 3% chance. And so,
goodness.
So he was like, are you sure? Like, let me get you a lab test. Let me let's get everything situated. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? And he was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I just was going to do whatever you said I had to do. And he was like, no, what do you want? What do you want to do? Aww. Like, if you want to have this baby, we'll have the baby. And I was like,
he was going by your lead.
Yeah, he was like, we'll see. And he was like, I'll get you set up with doctors in New York. Let's try to make this happen. And he was like, you don't have to start dialysis now until second trimester. Let's just see.
Wow.
And I was like,
that's awesome.
I couldn't believe it. I loved him so much. So he said that, and then I went to the doctors. I went to my OB and got a confirmation. And I know my OB was so confused because she probably was like, I thought you said you broke up with your husband. Because you know how you have to give them like your update about your social life and stuff.
Yeah.
She probably was like, okay. And then she had seen that, she had already sent me to a fertility doctor in the past and things like that. And so she was like, okay, you're pregnant. She gave me the due date. She said the same thing.
So was Astin's dad then your ex-husband?
No.
So your doctor's like, oh.
Right. She's like, oh.
We'll go back to that. Okay.
Oh, okay, you're pregnant. And she gave me the due date. And I'm like, oh, I'm due like October 28th. But I also knew the elephant in the room was that this will be a preemie. Without a doubt, this will be a premature baby. I was hoping to get to 30s. I'm like, oh, maybe. I was being so optimistic. I'm like, oh, I'll get to 36 weeks and maybe he'll be on the small side. I know he'll be in the NICU. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I had all of that in my mind within the first 2 weeks to find out I was pregnant. Because I had already known. I was also in a Facebook group for FSGS and pregnancy, like for years.
Oh, okay. So that kind of solidified the thought that you might not even make it full term.
That prepared me.
Oh, okay. Because I didn't know if you thought that, like, oh, I'm just grateful that I got pregnant. So even if I didn't know if you just assumed.
No, so I was in a group and people would share their micro-preemies and preemies, and so that had gave me faith that it could work out too. So, and I knew I probably wouldn't go past 34 weeks. But my prayer was to make it to 30. My prayer was to make it to 34. So yeah, so no one ever discouraged me. I was able to get
wow.
I used my insurance and found 3 doctors in New York. So in order for me to have a successful pregnancy, I needed a nephrologist in New York where I was living. I needed an OB, and I needed an OB, and then I also needed a so I saw I had to set up appointments with OB and then maternal fetal medicine, which is basically high risk, a big term for high risk doctor, and I mentioned already a nephrologist. And so I just did that looking up my insurance through the insurance through my job. But so yeah, all those doctors were super helpful. I went to the OB every month, but I went to the high risk doctor more often. Because they just wanted to check like my creatinine, and so creatinine is basically it's like a percentage of it that should be in your body, and if it's over 0.5, then that shows that you have some kidney liver failure happening, because it should be processed through your kidney, and if it's not, then you need to figure out how to get it out of your system.
Got it.
So they would monitor all of my levels, especially with my kidneys, and also checking the baby and my blood pressure. So even though I had kidney disease, I had secondary high blood pressure. So that was like a big thing to watch. And during my pregnancy, I went to the hospital pretty much every weekend. I always felt dehydrated, or I always had like heart palpitations because of the medications that I was on. And so it was like once a week sometimes. I would say like the first trimester, like I was always in the ER, just trying to get through. And
the ER?
Yeah, because it always happened on the weekends. And also I was just trying to be present at work. So I always felt
sick. So it wasn't scheduled for you to go every weekend? You just felt this way, and then you're like, rushed. Oh,
I think I was also just always afraid that there was something wrong with the baby every day. Yeah. And so on Fridays, my best friend and I would count down like, oh, we made it to like week 8. We made it. And then also I was spotting during week 8. And that made me like, I was like, it's over. You know?
Yes.
And I looked it up, and it was scary. Like, it's very normal to spot during week 8 because it's around your period. I was like,
And that's actually why we talk about this, because I didn't know that, obviously for first time, even second, whatever. It's like, we don't talk about, you could spot when you're pregnant.
And it's
instead
completely
of freaking out and then finding out lately. Yeah. So, but in your case, I was like hyper sensitive.
Hyper awareness.
Yeah.
Hyper aware.
But anyway, it ended up being nothing. The spot ended up being nothing. And I was fine. And so I just went to the doctors very often, and no one ever said, oh, you could. No one ever said you could die, but what every doctor always said was like, the mortality.
No, I don't know.
What you say?
What would the doctors be like? They're supportive, you mean?
Oh, they were, so
how do you
they
mean?
were pretty supportive.
Sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. They were pretty supportive of like no one ever discouraged me from having Astin.
Okay.
Where the issue came in was the quality of care. So I was 18 weeks. I think I was 18 weeks pregnant, and I had just found out it was a boy. And I was spotting again, and I had lots of pain and pressure in my pelvic, and it was to the point where I couldn't walk. And of course, like I told you, I always was like, it was always a threat to me, like that I would lose him. So the only doctor I could see with the insurance I had was Staten Island University. If you know anything about Staten Island, nobody looks like us.
I used to live in New York
So I get to and when you hit 16 weeks, you have to go to L&D. After 16 weeks pregnant, you go to L&D instead of the ER. So I go to L&D. I had to be.
Can you share what L&D is for
labor and delivery?
L&D is labor and delivery. So I go to labor and delivery, and I had to be wheelchaired in because I was in that much pain. They say, okay, we're going to prep her for delivery. Never do they check everything. They just say she's bleeding, she's cramping, we need to deliver the baby. And I was like, oh, like, do 18-week babies survive? And he's like, no. And I'm like, oh, well, he was just fine yesterday doing like my sonogram. And I was like, maybe like the cramps came from them. They did a probe the day before. And he's like, no, the doctor's like, no, I'm pretty sure you're just like losing them. And I was like, no. I was like, what? He was like, no, like we need to save you because you could be hemorrhaging, blah, 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 blah. We're just going to go ahead and prep you for delivery. And then on top of, to add insult to injury, when they go in to do like I forgot what it's called, when they have to stick the sonogram machine inside of your uterus. I can't think of the technical term for it.
Transvaginal ultrasound.
Yeah, so they go in and do a transvaginal ultrasound before setting me up for delivery. You're supposed to use it like a condom to do it.
Yeah, to cover it.
Asshole gets a glove and puts it. And mind you, gloves have been touched by people. This asshole gets a glove out of the latex glove box and puts it on it. And
the
I was
box
like,
is open. Oh my God.
And I think I literally said like out loud, like, and this is why black women die. I think I said it out loud. He was like a young guy, and I didn't care. I was like, this is why black women die. And so they do that, and then they like, oh, your fibroids, and the baby is okay. And I'm like, so why are y'all going to take him if he's okay? I was like, no, you're not taking my baby. I was like, I'll walk out of here. I couldn't walk. I was like, I'll walk out of here. And then they rolled me back to another room to go lay down while they, check the numbers and all that stuff. And then they come back and say, oh, you have a shrinking fibroid. Okay. So y'all was trying to make me deliver for a shrinking fibroid? Like, I mean, like, it was just insane. So they say,
let everyone take that in for a second.
Right.
Or, our listeners, our watchers, it's like, okay, now can we breathe? I know I need to breathe after hearing this because it's all of it. So emotional. Oh my gosh.
And I was by myself.
Well, and you were by
yourself.
You had to advocate for yourself while you're bleeding and in pain, which again, if it's a fibroid, no wonder you were in pelvic pain. Right? Like if the thing burst or if it, anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
But this is,
I'm angry.
I know. You'll be more angry when I talk about the bill.
That's why I said, let's take a breath.
Yes. For $8,000. And the bill was trying to say I delivered my baby. And I was like, and they charged me for a hospital stay.
Which you didn't say because you got up and walked out, even though you couldn't.
I left after they said it was a shrinking fibroid. I put my clothes on and I drove my happy ass back to Brooklyn from Staten Island. I was like, get out of here.
Wheel your ass out, walk out.
I was like,
something. Get out.
I don't know how. My mom always finds me wherever I'm at. My mom, I heard the phone ringing. I'm like, my mom was like, hey. I was like,
oh, she knew.
I was like, how did you find me? She was like, you told me what hospital you at. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just had to call and get the emergency room number. And so she's like, I hate this shit by yourself. Like, I hate that he's not with you. And she's like, you just need to come home. And I was like, no. By this time, I had already started dialysis. So I also had this, I spent my whole morning in the hospital and still had to go to dialysis that evening.
Mm-hmm.
When I get to dialysis, the doctor who I guess he was taking notes, and he called me and was like, we really think you need to get back to Baltimore where they can take better care of you. So you don't have trust in your practice and your MFM practice at SIU that I had to go all the way back to Baltimore to Johns Hopkins Hospital.
Oh, I was going to say, almost best hospital on the East Coast is in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling when you said, what was your initial reaction? Like obviously shocked.
I was like
what?
I was like in the chair, and I just was like, okay. But my plans were always to go back to Baltimore to deliver my son.
Yeah.
Also, I should say this on the podcast. If you are not planning to stay with the care that you begin with, do not tell them. Because it will show in how they take care of you, or they won't accept you as a new patient.
Yes, I've heard that before.
More money with the delivery process. So you never, if you're going to change care, do not tell anybody.
I've heard that before.
That's
Thanks
horrible,
for saying that
by the way, that we have to even do that.
But
it's
a
thing. You just change.
It's a thing.
No warning. Just walk away, and then do a request for your medical records.
So then, since we're talking about insurance, was your insurance like transferring or going to Johns Hopkins? Like,
Hopkins takes
was that always
much everybody, so it was fine.
Yeah, so that wasn't a question. You're like, okay, then I guess I'm going earlier than I thought.
I don't mind saying this on the podcast. My ex-husband works for Johns Hopkins, so I still had that insurance.
Okay.
I was still on his insurance because the promise when we separated was you can be on my insurance until you get your transplant. Because in order to even get on the transplant list, you need insurance to be verified to say, yes, this person is approved, this person is insured.
What God, you just said so many angels Adrianna's way. I could see the angels over you. This is like, I mean, obviously your journey is a lot of highs and lows, but that's just like, the miracles.
Yes.
Okay. So I understood about
so
you're transferring to John.
Yeah. So I was able to transfer because I had two insurances.
Yeah.
But Hopkins was my secondary. So I knew I would be fine.
So just that sentence, Hopkins was my secondary.
Well, their insurance was my
I love
secondary. The hospital was
because you were
mine.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I forgot to say that at the beginning.
knowledge.
I was already at Hopkins for my regular OB and for my non-nephrologist was at Hopkins. So I was already in the Hopkins.
Thanks for clarifying that, just for my sake too. Okay, good. Yeah. Let me figure No, this is good because I was gonna ask her like after her birthing, I was asking if she had like a birth plan.
That's a great question. So we were
I know the show.
Text about like television shows and stuff. So I get the phone call in January 2021 to get a transplant, and then I call him and I say, "Oh my God, I'm getting my transplant today." He was like, "Oh, I'm so happy for you. Congratulations!" Right? I come out of surgery I wake up the next morning. The social worker is in there, and she's like, "Hey, Miss Ebron, do you have an updated insurance card?" I said, "Oh, let me call my ex-husband. He probably has, because every January you get a new insurance card with some company. He probably has the new one. I probably didn't get it." Then they said, "Oh, we called him. He didn't answer." Oh, they said he's not at work. So then I call him. And I said, "Hey, do you have the insurance card that came out in January?" He was like, "No, why would I have your insurance card? You're not on my insurance." I was like, "What?" I was like, "What do you mean?" I said, "I talk to you all the time, and you didn't tell me that my insurance was canceled." He was like, "You had a baby with somebody else. Why would you still be on my insurance?" I said, "I had a baby with somebody else almost 2 years, because by this time it was 2021. I said almost 2 years ago."
Yeah.
And you always said, I said, "You always said I would be on your insurance up until whenever I got my transplant. So then he says, you should have been got your transplant.
Oh, he went that way. Oh my God. So you going this whole time without.
No,
I
went from November to January. It wasn't that long. But I still owe dialysis like $20,000.
No, before I know, but like he didn't tell you. Like, oh my God. Yeah.
So it was a couple of, thank God I got my
factors.
transplant.
Yes.
And Hopkins was like, we heard about what happened with your insurance. We're going to cover your hospital stay for the week, and then get you set up with like medication and things. And then Medicare just back paid it. I applied for Medicare.
Yeah.
I didn't get it until June, but they just backdated it, and it was fine. But
but still, that's so crazy.
I love Hopkins.
So on a happier note of your birth plan, did you have a birth plan? I mean, okay, so given all that you said and you shared,
I still had until I started dialysis and the MFN started explaining I probably would have to get a C-section. I still was like, I'm going, because in my mind I was still going until 36 weeks. So at first I was
your vision of it.
The vision I had was every woman, I want to do a natural birth, and I want to all that stuff natural birth. I knew I couldn't do at home because of my health condition, but I definitely wanted to go natural for so many different reasons, and the music playing and just all those, just lots of different natural things that are really good for birth for women is what I had in my mind. But when I got home to Johns Hopkins and saw the MFM there, he was very black and white with it, all right, Staten Island, their team did a great job getting you here, but here's the reality. We will deliver you at 36 weeks via C-section. We'll bring you in, we'll schedule it, and we'll get it done. And he's like, most likely it might not be me. He was like, and my aunt was there, and was asking him well, how old is the person delivering? Because he's like, oh, the residents normally deliver, and you always have an attending and a fellow in the room. And my aunt was asking him questions, and then he explained it, and I was just like, okay, 36 weeks. Literally, I leave the office. Is that the same day? I go to get my 22-week scan, and they're like, your cervix is open. I'm like, huh? I already had kidney problems.
Yeah.
How do I have women's health issues too? I don't know. So I go, and they're like, oh, your cervix is open. We need to keep you overnight to monitor you and figure out how to get you closed up. So I stay overnight for 2 days. They offered me to do a cerclage or a pessary. I wanted the pessary. So a cerclage is you actually have to undergo anesthesia, and your cervix is closed with a tie. But it's done. It's a surgical procedure. A pessary is a little button that the doctor comes in and puts their hand into your vagina to put the button on your cervix. And it just kind of closes your cervix temporarily until it's time to deliver.
Did you know about this, Flo?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm telling
this
you,
is why she's my partner.
I know all of this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
wow.
So I got the pessary. It makes you stink.
Okay.
It makes you stink because it's just holding all of your stuff.
There's no ability for the vagina to cleanse itself.
I was like,
and it stays until you're ready to have give birth.
I was like, oh, this stinks. Shoot, I'm sorry.
Well, how did it feel? I mean, you're how it stinks.
How did it feel like anything? Okay. But I did forget to mention that I was on progesterone, which they also give to women who have go through fertility treatment. I was on a heavy dose of progesterone to kind of get the cervix to close, because my cervix, I knew my cervix was dilated since I was in New York, since I was 8. I have been 1 centimeter dilated since 18 weeks, I think. So
centimeter's not that bad. But still, not something you want.
It's not safe. And so I had been on progesterone since then. I was doing inserts. I was doing the suppositories for progesterone, and then I started doing the pill once they gave me the pessary. Then they were like, "You can take it, but it's not going to do much now." Like, you know, like saying like by the time I got to Hopkins, my cervix was like funneling and it was soft, and it was the pessary only could do but so much, which is why I didn't get.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm assuming that they didn't even give me the surplus. They didn't explain this to me at the time, but the more I've done research, I'm like, oh yeah, I was too soft to even do a surplus. Like, it was no point. So I go home. 3 days later, I'm bleeding. I call the emergency. I call labor and delivery. They said, come on in. If you fill up a pad, come in. I wasn't filling up a pad, but the bleeding would not stop. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable staying home. So I get to the hospital. I get to labor and delivery, and they were monitoring the baby, monitoring my heart rate, all that fun stuff. And then you have to sign paperwork in case you deliver.
And you're at 22 weeks, right?
I was 22 weeks. I had to sign paperwork for delivery, and then the anesthesiologist came in to explain, like, if I had to get an emergency C-section that night, here's what has to happen. And then I also got steroid shots for the baby's lungs, that in your butt. And then we couldn't figure out why I was bleeding. I didn't have to deliver, but we couldn't figure out why I was bleeding. The bleeding stopped after like a day or so, and then they came in and they were like, we found something else wrong. You have intermittent blood flow between you and your son. I'm like, what does that mean?
What?
They were like,
gosh.
It is something that if you go home, you have to come Tuesdays and Thursdays to come get it checked. Or you can stay here and we'll check it twice a week as well. Considering I had dialysis 6 days a week while I was pregnant.
When did you start dialysis? At what? How many weeks were you?
I forget. I want to say I was like 19 weeks.
Okay.
No, I had to be, if I went to Staten Island University at 18 weeks, then I must have started at 17 weeks dialysis.
Okay.
I remember the date. It was Memorial Day. I just can't remember how many weeks it was.
Right.
The week I started dialysis was the week I went to, the week they tried to
Staten
take him
Island.
out. Yep. I started dialysis that Monday. I went to Staten Island University that Saturday, June 1st.
And then you had to go to dialysis that night after you left the Staten Island. Yeah, that's when you started.
I took the option of staying in the hospital, and I was
Can you share about what that was? When they found out?
Yeah, so it's kind of. I'm gonna be honest. I still don't 100% understand it, but basically, the blood flow in the umbilical cord should go forward, right? Right.
Well, it's not safe.
It should go. It should flow. It should be a good flow. But what was happening was like the flow wasn't continuous. It was stopping. And the dangerous side is that it could start reversing, which meant that to reverse blood flow, which is typically caused by like women who have high blood pressure and other like really high risk health issues. The reverse blood flow would give him like poison and like all like the bad bad nutrient, like bad stuff.
All bad stuff. Yeah.
So the goal was every Tuesday and Thursday to check the flow. Once the flow reversed, it was time to take him out. And then they came back. So I was there for like 2 weeks, and then they came in and they were like, okay, he has one more issue happening. He is not growing. So your baby has what's called IUGR, intrauterine growth restriction. What happened in Astin's case, he was 25 weeks, but like when he was born, he was 27 weeks, but he came out the size of a 25 weeker. So what was happening in those 4 weeks of me staying in the hospital was he just, his size was still catching up with him. So during my time in the hospital, I went on a NICU tour. I had a NICU fellow that came in and chatted with me about all the different machines that, you know, they had available, and that the goal as a team from my doctors and the NICU doctors, everyone was watching me super close. I had a team of doctors, NICU doctors watching Astin. I had my team here. I had 3. NICU, nephrology was watching me every day, watching my kidneys and watching me at dialysis. And then I had MFM, really 4, and then regular OB. Every day I'm meeting with these people every single day, which felt like, you know, I felt, obviously I was depressed being in the hospital, 4 walls. My mom and my dad would come almost every day. My dad put a fire stick in the television.
Oh, go dad! Did you? But you felt. It sounds like you felt supported by the hospital staff, NICU staff.
Yeah, I did.
Staff.
I definitely did. I always say I felt,
even though you had the 4 walls and you were
I had a primary
closed,
nurse that was amazing. She and I are still pretty close.
Love it.
And
yes,
the depression part was like being like my hardest days were Sundays, because everyone in my family was busy. My nurse wasn't there. The doctors didn't really come in on Sundays, so it was quiet. I didn't like it quiet. One time I tried to go to Target, which is like 5 minutes, like 10 minutes away from Hopkins. And they were like, "Oh, you can go to campus. And you can walk around campus." And I was like,
okay.
"Oh, okay." So I'm like, Target's down the street.
You did not stay in campus, did you?
Oh no, I didn't have my car. My mom was like, so my mom and my aunt, I was like, "Oh, they said I can go to Target." And then my mom was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah." So then we get to the nurse's station, and the doctor is there, and she's like, "What do you want to go do? You have your purse?" I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go to Target." She was like, "You can't go to Target." She's like, "I said you can walk around campus."
Campus,
I was like, "Oh, okay." So I'm like, okay. But they had a Starbucks on campus. So one time when my sister came out,
okay, like, there you go. I love it.
Let's go to Starbucks. Like, my plan is to talk more and more about my stay in the hospital, to encourage more women to feel comfortable with staying, and to also feel comfortable even sharing about their stay. Because when I started talking about my pessary and having to stay in the hospital, that's when all these people that were already in my life were like, "Oh, that happened to me too." I'm like, "Well, damn, you could have told somebody."
Exactly. Which now someone's going to listen to your podcast and then they know. Exactly. Because you had because you were able to, when we talk about birth plan, of course, you're like, "Oh, yes, I want this." But the reality is you knew what you were really going to have.
Yeah.
You know, and not a lot of people go in knowing they're going to have a planned C-section. I had my second, child. I had a planned C-section, and so I was able to create the experience in the actual delivery room and prep and before. Well, how is it like for you now going into 27 weeks, right? Or like, what was the time that like you knew, okay, this is happening?
It wasn't you're right. So I lost out on the 36-week thing that I had planned. The goal was just to make it. The goal was just to get him. The goal from all 14 members was to make it until he got to a pound. If we could beef him up, get him to be a pound, it's go time.
So all the listeners and viewers, that could actually be on the birth plan. because we're going to talk about this stuff because this, delivery diaries, and on this podcast, it's about, what people don't tell you. Can we hear it from the horse's mouth? Can we hear from people's experiences and their stories? I
definitely think getting the baby to 2 pounds if you can get the 2 pounds, is even better. 1.5 pounds is more viable.
Viable.
That's the biggest word, is viability. That's what you hear. That's what I heard my entire pregnancy, and especially in those 4 weeks. He finally makes it to a pound. I felt the onset of preeclampsia the Sunday before I delivered. I couldn't see. People were talking to me, and I had no idea how sick I was, but my tech, she was like, she came in that night. She was one of my favorite techs. She came in that night. Once they finally got my blood pressure, that whole entire Sunday, my blood pressure was like through the roof. They were doing everything to get it down. And I found out later on that they thought I would deliver that day, but I didn't know because I felt so ill that whatever happened, I was like, whatever. Like, I was done.
And how many weeks were you already?
20. I must have just hit 27.
20.
I think I turned my weeks were on Monday. Yeah, because it was like I was like right at almost 27. I would have been 27 the next day. So she texted me. She's like, "Oh, do you want to go see the Jesus statue today?" And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Sure." Like, I've been pretty much in and out of it all day, and I was finally like up and feeling better. She was like, "I'm gonna roll you down to the Jesus statue." And I'm like, "Okay,
let's go see Jesus."
She's like, "And we'll go to the statue too. We'll go to the chapel." And I had no idea that they wanted me to deliver that day, but she did. So when she came in, she's like, "We need to go, go take care of this." So I go to the Jesus statue, which I had never gone to since I've been at Hopkins, and I went to chapel to say a prayer and light a candle for Astin, and then I go back to my room, and then like the rest of the week is pretty like quiet. Still doing a check. Tuesday's check was fine. Thursday morning, I woke up and I felt absolutely horrible. And I didn't eat. And everyone on the entire floor knew that I had to eat before I went to dialysis, or it was going to be hell to pay when I got back. Because dialysis is 3 hours. You sit 3 hours on a machine. And I was like, if y'all don't let me eat before, heads are going to roll
because you don't eat,
right? It was very clear. Like the doctors, everybody knew. Like, do not let her go down without eating. So I get down and they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I really don't feel good. I feel really nauseous." And so the nephrologist comes over to me at dialysis and he looks at me. He's like, "You look like you don't feel well." And I was like, "I don't. I want to go back to my room. Can I cut my session early?" It's a big thing on dialysis. You never want to keep cutting your sessions early because you're not getting the entire treatment. I'm glad I did. I get upstairs. I get the check from my Tuesday, Thursday check. And the blood flow between me and Astin had reversed. And also, I could barely see anything. Once again, my pressure was through the roof. And
the pressure.
My mom walks in. Everything's happening at like literally simultaneously. I'm like, this is the day.
Did they tell you had preeclampsia already by then?
But
the blurring,
the hardest part. Yeah.
One of the
signs.
Yeah, that's part of high blood pressure.
Yeah.
So.
But so the doctor sits on my bed and she's like, the blood flow is reversed. He's sitting pretty low, so you can still push him out. I started screaming at her. I was like, "Why would I push him out? He's a pound."
I just got what you said. Yeah.
Why with high blood pressure?
Oh Lord.
And
who said that again?
The doctor.
Maybe she thought a vision of you having this.
Girl, I said, "What are you talking about?" Like, no, I'm not pushing him out. He's 1 pound. And she's like, "Why are you crying?" And my mom was like, "Because you just told her she has to deliver via emergency C-section." So like, Astin's heart rate was dropping because of like the reverse blood flow. So within like an hour of me being upstairs and talking to everybody, they're pushing me back up, pushing me around to the OR.
Wow.
Super scary moments in time, but I think I delivered within those 2 hours, and that was my prenatal journey.
When we get to delivery?
Yeah, we're not even to the.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm taking
no, don't be sorry.
Like that was part of it. That's really that's
and honestly,
that was really
super important, right? to really for the audience and for people, it's what we're here to do is help educate, right? And if your story helps somebody understand, like this journey is possible, and women are strong enough to do this, and getting them to 1 pound, that was the goal.
Yeah, and you were in your right mind to say it. No, I'm not pushing.
You know, lost your mind.
Whereas it's the opposite. Moms want to push, but not have this.
I'm not that. I'm not that person.
So it was scary. It's scary to be rolled into. Like you're on the slab, you know, headed to the ER. You know, you're there for a couple hours. Things are coming at me now. So you're in the ER for a couple hours because obviously. Oh, did you say 2 hours? You said something about 2 hours.
I went upstairs at 1:30, 2 o'clock. I delivered at 3:59.
Got it. Okay.
Emergency C-section. My biggest fear was that he was stillborn. That's all I kept saying. Like, I just want him to come out alive. And I had learned. Was that Beyonce? I know this sounds cliche, but I think it was Beyonce that I was reading about her pregnancy journey. And she was saying that you can connect with your child mentally through the womb and just talk in your head. And I just was like, okay. Like, I was talking to him the whole time, like, okay, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Like, let's just get this over with. You're going to come out okay. But then, like, the fear started to settle in more when he got out. And I was like, Mom, is he, like, breathing? Like, is he okay? And they were like, yeah, they just, they just held him up real quick and, like, whisked him off. Came out, like this.
Fighting.
They were so, they talk about it even now. You ask any of my doctors, they were like, we've never seen a 1 pound come out like that. He was like, what the hell is going
Yeah, so for the listeners, you like got a little like Tyson fist going on here, like moving and shaking.
They would tie me back up. They were like, he came out grimacing and hitting us. I'm like, what? They're like, yes.
That's good.
He's like, wait a minute.
He was hitting our hands. And I'm like, what?
He's like, don't hurt my mommy.
He wasn't like coddled or just like, oh, he was like, hello.
1 pound baby talking about, get off of me. Everybody get off of me. Put me back in.
Yes, it's like, what am I doing? What's going on? That's a healthy sign.
Yeah, it was.
As far as that goes. Yeah. One step at a time with him being out now. So he's out. So he's delivered. He's out in the world. So swept him up. And what was the emotion when you saw him? Like, did they hold him up to you? Were you able to see? Did they have the curtain, obviously,
and they were holding him to my right, I remember, over on their table, but they had to get him intubated right away. 73 days in the step-down unit, 92 days in the NICU. He was intubated with a breathing tube for 60 days. We tried to extubate him after 30 days. Found out he had pneumonia. That was the scariest day of my life because he almost died, and I had to hit the cold button on him. I know I say it with zero emotion now because when you watch your child fight for their life inside of a plastic container that has humidity in it, it is a place in your heart that you'll just never get that sweetness back. Like, it is so cold and it's just so raw that it's just, there is a part of me that like almost can't cry most of the time, but it's very hard for me to cry now. It is so hard. And I also think I cried so much on the NICU that like that's why I can't cry anymore.
You cried yourself out. Yeah,
I probably cried myself out.
Yourself.
So yeah, we he had lots of different health challenges, brain bleeds, lung issues. He had pneumonia one time. If you meet other NICU moms, that's pretty common and it happens a lot.
Yeah.
So we were blessed that I was blessed that, we only came home on oxygen. I didn't have to come home with an entire medical team. I have lots of friends whose children came home with like a G tube and a trach, but we didn't have to get that. And I think God knew that was something I couldn't handle because I was still on dialysis. Yeah. When he came home from the NICU.
For yourself.
Yeah.
So care of yourself.
God was like, all right, I got you. You don't, I'm going to make sure he don't need the trach because one of y'all got to be okay when you go home,
Right.
And so we came home on a little bit of oxygen. And then like 2 weeks later, we were all stuck in the house. And Astin came home from the hospital. In January 14th, caught the flu.
And we're talking about COVID, y'all. Just so people are
sorry. He was talking about COVID. He caught the flu from a daggone social worker that came to my house. Astin had a fever and all kinds of craziness, but I had to take him back to the hospital. After only being home for 2 weeks, I was so pissed.
So just to give context, everyone, so not only are you having a baby in your health situation and then Astin's health situation, now you're having a baby in the pandemic situation.
A baby on oxygen at home.
Yeah.
You're on dialysis. Like you can't not go to dialysis.
Right.
Right. Like that's like, so you're terrifying.
Where do you pulled your strength from?
I feel like my village and also the FSGS pregnancy mom group was really like good. Meeting like moms online who were also in the NICU, family members and friends who had NICU babies. I have a strong faith in God, but I definitely think that those 6 months of Astin being in the NICU, almost 6 months, I had to like question everything. I'm like, are you listening to me? Like, why am I like? And it wasn't until like this year where I was like, oh my God, I definitely told God that I would do anything for that child. When I found out I was pregnant, and he was like, "Say less. I got you."
I remember. Okay.
I had my.
Do you remember, Adrianna, when
I
you
had
said
my
this?
car repossessed. I was hospitalized. I didn't have a phone anymore. I didn't have a job. Like everything was stripped from me, but my son. My health was so bad. Like everything you could think of was just happening, and I think back to that moment when I said, whatever I gotta do to keep this child.
And part of that was taking care of yourself, making sure that you were strong and healthy.
I will say that I did not see, and I mentioned this to Brandy before in the past, when Astin was in the NICU, I knew I had postpartum depression right away. Like at my 6-week appointment, they give you the checklist. I definitely had it. Hopkins has a mood disorder clinic for women. They did not have a therapist anymore that could like help you. All they had were people who would give out prescriptions. And I was anti-prescription at the time. Now I'm not at all. But at that time, I was like, I don't want that. Like, I really want somebody to talk to. Even like when I was in the hospital for those 4 weeks, they were like, oh, the only way you can get a therapist is to be in the psych ward. You can see somebody at the mood disorder clinic when you leave, but you can't have it.
This is only in 2019. It's not like back when it was so
they were like, we don't have inpatient options for a therapist to come see you. You can talk to the chaplain or the social worker.
Right. Now I want to stop right there just for a second and pause and really like let that sink in. One of the premier hospitals, one of the premier teaching hospitals in our country, in the world, does not have inpatient on staff psychologists.
But
that's bananas. For what? For anything, probably.
Right, for anything,
honestly. But we know for sure for OB. High risk pregnancy, has preeclampsia, knows she's going to have a preemie, no therapists. That is something that we have to change. That is something that we culturally have to change. And in our medical system, we need to change. Because a lot of people don't need antidepressants. They just need somebody to talk to.
And that's what I was begging for. I was begging for it. I was begging
unbelievable.
For it. I was begging for it. And the social worker was new. She was like, oh, I used to be on a cancer ward, and now I'm new to OB, but, just tell me what you need and I can help. And I'm just like I don't really want a therapist.
You guys, our listeners, you got to go on the YouTube and watch because our reactions, right? I'm high right now.
Yeah,
I'm just looking back like,
whew. Yeah. Okay. And so I went to so once Astin was in the NICU, I went to the mood disorder clinic. They didn't have a therapist. I was like, I don't want that. I don't want someone that would just give me medicine. So you
were proactive.
Yeah, I was like, and then there was no resources. So when Astin went to the step down hospital, Mount Washington, they have a therapist that comes to bedside.
Oh, that's good.
And that was, and I still remember her, and she was so helpful. And we would go on walks and talk outside, because the hospital is the children's hospital, but it's like has a really beautiful campus, and we would go outside.
Children's hospitals, gotta love it.
Yeah. And so I did have somebody, but then when he came home from the NICU, I didn't have anybody, and my intrusive thoughts got really bad when he came home. And I imagine that it's what happens normally when moms bring their children home from like the hospital, like after like a couple of days of being there. I always wonder how I survived that, but I still don't really know. And I never told anybody about my intrusive thoughts. I kept them to myself up until last year.
That's a real thing.
I also knew that it was normal. I knew that. Okay, so I know that it's not normal to have intrusive thoughts, but I knew that it was something that came with what I had been through, and something that was a part of postpartum depression. What I didn't know until 2021 was that it was 6 different type of mood disorders, and where I fell in those mood disorders.
It's a spectrum that we're not talked about, that we don't learn about, that we think, it's like, was it for you? For me, it was like inside of postpartum depression. Was it like a outer body experience? Because you're having these thoughts, but you're like not really want to be in action in these thoughts?
I knew that it wasn't an outer body experience, but I did know that every time I had those thoughts, that it was just postpartum. And I would be like, oh, that's postpartum.
Adrianna, I hope that there's a mom out there who's listening, who's in the midst of it, who hears that and can take that in, because that's huge. The ability to be able to sit with the feeling or sit with the thought and be like, okay, that's not reality. That is something that's happening to me. It is not who I am. That's strength. I mean, that's just pure strength.
I also do wish that I felt comfortable telling somebody.
Yeah.
I do wish that I felt okay with a 24-hour hold, because I knew what would happen if I spoke up. I will not lie and say, like, I don't regret not speaking up. And like you said, I end up making it through. But I definitely encourage, especially women of color, to say something, because we're so afraid that somebody's going to think we're weak because we said it. And you're not weak. You're not weak at all. Like, if you pick up a sharp object and your mind says something different that it really should say, that is postpartum OCD or postpartum depression, maybe even postpartum psychosis. And you need to say something, especially if you don't feel like yourself. And that psychosis is like, when I found out what postpartum psychosis was, I was like, okay, I didn't have that. I definitely had OCD, which is closer to psychosis. I wish I would have. I wish that I probably would have gotten like medication right before Astin came home. Had I known that I had no idea, like, him being home would trigger me.
But we have no idea.
Well, that's the thing, right? They don't. It's you hear a little bit about postpartum depression occasionally, or like you'll pick up a pamphlet at the OB's office while you're waiting for your appointment or whatever, but it is not part of standard care. At least it doesn't seem like it.
What it is you go home, learn to put your baby on your boob or a bottle,
right?
Sleep when the baby sleeps. Oh, wait a minute. What about the mom? What about the mom care? Like you just said, Flo, it's not part of.
It doesn't seem to be part of our, and like, we live in California. We're super progressive out here. I don't remember any of my doctors talking to me about postpartum depression, let alone the possibility of postpartum psychosis.
So I've been like generally talking about it since I joined. I think how I found out about the spectrum was like from Clubhouse, actually, and from joining the Maternal Mental Health Coalition, and that's how I learned about it. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna be on this thing forever. Like, and then I also didn't speak up because I could lose my place on the transplant list. So if you say that you're depressed,
oh my gosh,
or you get hospitalized for depression, you will be taken off the list until you show that you have some type of progress and you can get back on it.
But they drop you down to the bottom at that point? I guess it doesn't work that way.
She annoyed the hell out of me. And everybody's like, oh, she's so cool because she helps you get money. Okay.
And yeah. It's the system.
I definitely think dialysis was a big part of it.
It sounds like, well, yeah, because your whole situation is very unique. Not maybe unique to others, but
that was definitely adding to the postpartum.
Well,
that's
right,
so
because
scary.
you couldn't bring him with you.
Alone.
No.
I mean, could you?
No, and then I ended up having to get a ride because my car was repossessed I think after he had the flu, we came home, and like my car was repossessed that weekend.
Oh, Adrianna.
And my cell phone was off. So it was like...
Is that when your village and family
I feel like my
pulled
village
through, or
definitely stepped in, but I had issues with my mom where she wanted to control the situation, and sometimes she wouldn't watch him, and that made it worse. I was trying to work, and then I had to quit. I had like an outburst on a student, which I fully regret, but I know that what that was. And I had this baby at home on oxygen, and I'm like, like my life is crazy.
Right. Yeah. And again, that goes to like, we talk about policy sometimes, Brandy, like, in other countries, you would have had a year off to be a mom, right? Like there are other places where we're not so tied to work, and God,
you would have time for healing.
Yeah.
Healing.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. I say village because some of my family was there, and the people who I thought would be there more, like they were there, but it was just like, it just was lots of guilt that came with them, them being there, if that makes sense. So it was like,
it does. And then, how long then was Astin and oxygen for at home? Like when was the time when things started to kind of? Sorry, say that again.
I think he came off of oxygen in April or May.
So he came home in 2020, and then he was only on the oxygen for a few months.
Yeah, a few months.
Okay. Was it around that time? So when did it start to feel like, okay, things are kind of like steady, or there's now some kind of like
June 2021.
Okay.
I did not hear birds chirping. I don't remember anything about spring 2020. I don't remember the trees in my neighborhood blooming. I don't remember like what it looked like outside, what it felt like outside. I was in a complete fog. When spring 2021 came, I was like, when did we get these trees? And I was like, oh, okay. It all made sense. I was in a fog. Like,
you were in survival mode. You were in the fog.
Survival mode.
You were in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm piecing it together because of how we met. We knew each other in 2020. Yeah. And our kids, our babies were born in 2020. Sophia was born in June. And then, or was it 20? Whichever.
Yeah, Astin was 2019. Okay. Sophia was born in 2020. Yeah.
Yes. So kind of like.
They're close in age.
Yeah, they're close in age. I remember that. So then when did you start? I'm not fast forwarding to skip any other parts. We're going to talk about like him. But like, when did you start Astin and Friends?
Oh, okay.
Like when around that time?
June 2020. I mean, June 20. Hold on.
No, it's okay. For those listening, this is Adrianna. This is Adrianna's company, and that's how we also met on Clubhouse CEO Moms.
Yeah. So I started Astin and Friends because I needed extra money, and everybody in that was making T-shirts during the pandemic, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to make T-shirts too. So I started Astin and Friends June 2020. And then like Christmas did really well. Everything, it went really well. Like I was having fun.
I thought it went well because that's how I'm wearing one of your shirts right now. It's fall, y'all. Okay. I'm representing for you listeners watching the video.
Yeah. For listeners watching, we're taping. We're recording on September 23rd, so it is in fact fall.
It is
because this podcast launched on the first day of fall, September 22nd. And I have to say that, and Adrianna is our first guest. Yes. But yes, because I'm bringing up Astin and Friends, your company, because I'm tying it now all to your whole experience you're sharing with us, like your car repossessed and like, oh Lord, where's your money? You got no money. Like, what's going on here? And then because when I met you, it seemed like you're in the height of Astin and Friends. We're ordering shirts from you and sweatshirts. So that's why I wanted to tie that in.
June 2020 is when I started it. And then pretty much continued through last year. I got so overwhelmed and exhausted from 2021 Christmas season that I haven't been marketing like I normally.
You took a break.
I had to take a break because I started school. I knew I was starting school this year, and I started working full time, and I cannot do all of it. So I had been taking a few orders for some hoodies, and I want to do a NICU give back next month. So that'll kind of be about it because I physically make the shirts. So I was like, I literally have
Flo, we're getting a hoodie.
Zero time.
Yep.
Now and
you got a toddler. You have a toddler running around your house.
And I have a toddler, and he's autistic, so he's in therapy, and so
And he just started school, right? Preschool?
He just started preschool. I just started school. I'm like, nope.
What are you studying?
I am getting my PhD, and it's an interdisciplinary program. But my research is going to be in education and ADHD and brown and black boys K through 5.
That is amazing. Good for you.
Dr. Adrianna.
So right now I'm getting my coursework.
Your story is so rich with information and education and just passion too.
And so if you can, first, can you just share, for our listeners and viewers, now you're discovering how you can manage or heal with your postpartum depression or postpartum OCD. When do you feel like you have a handle on it from then when you came home until now? What's the biggest difference, or what can you share? What's helping you, or what you want to do to help you more? I don't know if you're in there yet.
I think once Astin and I got into a routine, and once my dialysis got better, because I was struggling on dialysis at first, that's when my postpartum OCD slowed down as far as the side effects. I still have visions of being in a car accident every day. So I think that I do still have, and so I do know that it's not postpartum anymore. This is possibly really OCD that I need to be diagnosed with, if I'm still having the visions of a car accident. But I am able to control it, where I'm just I can tell myself that is Adrianna is okay. I actually tell myself every day before I leave out the house, you deserve peace. You deserve to be safe. No one is intentionally going to hurt you or drive a car into the side of you. It's okay. It's okay to be afraid to get into a car accident because you are afraid, you want to protect your cubs. But it's also okay to know that you can go outside of your house and you'll come back. And so I just, a lot of self-care, a lot of self-talk, a lot of journaling, a lot of mirror talk, a lot of mirror work is how I get through.
And you said you're open to medication now, whereas before you weren't.
Yeah, I'm definitely open to it. And bipolar, schizophrenia is runs in my family. I know you're not supposed to call it manic depression anymore. So people they refer to it as bipolar, but
bipolar, yeah.
Yeah, I have several family members who suffer from anxiety and depression. I have not had some of the same things they go through, but I definitely still see the remnants of OCD, and it comes out. I was telling Brandy during that time of the month is when it gets the worst.
Heightened. Yeah. And my doctor explained, obviously after birth, that's it. Our hormones shift, the neurons in our brain are rewiring.
I want my memory
so
back. That's what I really want.
So that's I had a conversation. OCD, postpartum.
I had the memory of and now it's I think it is PTSD from the NICU too, where
well, yeah,
I lost out on. I get so emotional about this part. I lost core memories, and it hurts my soul because I remember everything. That's the only thing I want.
There is there's opportunity to have that healing. I mean, this is beyond a podcast. This is beyond having information and resources on our website when we launch Delivery Diaries. This is about retreats. This is about healing. This is about mothers coming together, prenatal, postpartum, just to have a spiritual like healing and thoughtfulness and care that we all need and deserve. So you're still on that journey.
Definitely.
And those core memories could come back. You could still be there. We're still on that journey because this is really fresh for you. You know, it's only been a couple of years.
They're in there somewhere. They're in there.
Can you just share before we go why NICU Awareness Month? So we're having your episode specifically on NICU Awareness Month, and obviously you're sharing your journey. But can you also just share why it's important? Because you are an advocate of the NICU.
Yes. I think that it is. So I think everyone should know about the NICU, whether you are someone who plans to have a family or doesn't plan to have a family, because then you can support a friend or family member that may be in the NICU. The NICU is a very delicate, scary place where angels work, and I think it's really important to just become aware, because you have people who might spend a day in the NICU, that might spend an hour in the NICU, maybe even 20 minutes. But hearing that word is like, whoa, my baby has to go where? And so bringing that awareness up is so important, because then people are educated on it. I even am writing in my blog for this month, like, even if you're not high risk, you should take a tour of the NICU. You should meet the NICU doctors. I truly believe that, because you never know.
You never know.
I have had 2 people that I interviewed on live who had home births that didn't go well, and they had to be rushed to the hospital and spent 2 weeks in the NICU. Right? So it's so important that you have a birth plan, but also that you understand that and give yourself grace that sometimes birth plans take a turn, and that having NICU Awareness Month helps you add the NICU to your birth plan just in case.
An additive awareness.
Yeah.
Can you share your websites, or how can people reach you or connect with your story more?
Every platform at Astin's Mama, on Pinterest and Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And my website is www.astinsmama.com.
Of course, we'll have that on our sites and all
the show notes.
Instagrams, everything, everywhere.
My accent is Baltimore.
We talked about that before. What accents do we have? That's amazing. Yeah. Oh my goodness. You know, and just when you said the NICU has angels, you know, Adrianna, you are an angel.
Yeah.
Astin's an angel.
Thank you.
You have angels all around you. Thank you for coming on and being our first guest.
Yes, I'm honored to be your first guest. As soon as you asked me, I was like, yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Taking the time.
And we appreciate the transparency, because the stuff, I mean, you're a pretty tough person, and I can see that, and you're very strong. But the stuff sometimes is still, I mean, it's private and it's personal, and it can get touchy, you know. And so thank you for being so.
I made it.
We appreciate you. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you so much for talking, Adrianna. This has been great.
All right, talk to
Bye,
you.
Guys. Bye, ladies.
Bye. Thanks for listening. Hey, Astin,
thanks for having me.
That in your hand?